Hello there! So this is the first ever real episode of the Orange Truth archetypical concentrations in which we'll be looking at the TV show Friends. Basically what's going to happen is that, as I told you in my introduction, we are going to be looking at specific characters in TV shows and looking at which types of archetypes their personality fits best. In this, we're going to be talking about Chandler Bong.
Actually, it's Miss Chandler Bong.
When I first saw Chandler, I thought it was going to be pretty straightforward. He's the jester. He's the funny guy. Not only is Jester not exactly what I think fits him best, there's also some other ones that he fits into. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each individual archetype and see if he fits it. Number 1, the ruler. So the ruler is categorized by someone who loves the rules, wants the rules, needs the rules. They don't like surprises and they don't like to be caught off guard. Things should be a certain way to them. They like having a certain process of doing things and following through with a plan. They value their safety and security. They sort of set higher standards to themselves and other people that they think others should follow, and because of that, they think they should be in charge because they know best. I don't think that Chandler really fits this one in particular. He is known for making up jokes on the fly, using comedy as a defense mechanism. He doesn't really follow certain traditional standards. Let's not forget that he actually got a chick and a duck as pets, along with Joe, who's sort of a pet in his own right. He does have certain, standards that he applies to. For example, when he was Oh, he's a transmonster! He actually was getting spanked by his boss, and at first he didn't quite like that. He thought this was kind of an odd, weird thing, and wasn't really a big fan of it. That was until he found out that everyone else liked it, and it was actually a symbol of praise from his boss. Then he wanted to be spanked just like any other guy. I wouldn't exactly qualify him as a ruler, mostly because he does not really show that kind of self-confident personality that one would look for in a ruler, and he's definitely willing to go off track if need be and make things up as he goes along. So the next archetype is the jester. Now, the jester is the kind of person that lives in the here and now. It's almost the opposite of the ruler. They love spontaneity, they love surprises, they love making things up as they go along, and they don't really plan for the future. They're impulsive and unrestrained. They're not afraid to be in the spotlight, and they're also, again, very confident with themselves. They're very optimistic, and they love looking at things from multiple points of view. They often are kind of the outliers. They don't really succumb to traditional social norms. And in a way, this kind of is Chandler. I mean, if you look at the way he grew up with, he was the kind of guy that his dad cheated on his mom when he was 9 for the pool boy.
More turkey, Mr. Chandler.
Which actually caused him to start smoking at the age of 9 and have a horrible distaste for Thanksgiving. He loathes that time period because it represents a horrible time in his life. And his mom grew up to writing sexual erotica, so you can say that he probably doesn't exactly have the traditional childhood. He grew up in a very sexually active, or at least for his parents, sexually open environment, but he himself was not exactly the playboy stud that you would expect someone to grow up to be in that kind of environment. But I gotta say though, this jester is supposed to be someone that's confident, in charge, and although is traditionally a man and is traditionally a comedian, I don't think this fits Chandler because he does plan for the future. I mean, he has a banking account, he has a sort of white-collar cubicle job. He's not really one to really step too far into the spotlight, although he does enjoy making the occasional, quippy comment and making jokes and all. He doesn't want to be the main character and everything. He sort of wants to be just the side character that's kind of wants to be, you know, the backup singer, metaphorically speaking. The next archetype is the everyman. Now, the everyman is often characterized as someone being hardworking and honest, but the one thing that they want more than anything is to be a part of a family or group. They don't want to be social outcasts, they don't want to be alone, and they don't really value status. They enjoy seeking out like-minded individuals. They are traditional followers, sheeps, not shepherds. Once accepted, they're okay with the way things are. They're not usually one to stand up for themselves and speak their opinion if it's different from the norm, and often develop a kind of an us versus them persona, and they're often not very mature. And I gotta say, I think this kind of fits Chandler pretty well. I mean, throughout the show, he often puts himself in the line of fire almost intentionally. Again, not very confident. I mean, his parents divorced at a very young age, which also caused him to have not a good family life, and they also put themselves in bad situations. He did intentionally choose to go out with Janice multiple times. So yeah, I think this would be a good contender for what Chandler really is. The next one is the caregiver archetype. This is traditionally shown as a motherly character, the one that, although can be overbearing at times, often has the best interest of others at heart. They need to take care of others because they think they're more equipped to handle the situations. And I can kind of see that, because Chandler did supply Joey with the financial needs in order to continue his career as an actor. I mean, he spent lots of money on, you know, headshots and acting lessons. So yeah, I think you could kind of say that he is a bit of a caregiver in the respect that he does greatly value taking care of others, especially after he loses his nubbin.
That was an obvious joke. And I didn't think of it. Why didn't I think of it? The source of all my powers. Oh dear God, what have I done?
So after he loses this nubbin, he actually kind of becomes a lot more of a sensitive, caregiving individual, particularly when he starts dating Monica. Now that he's in this relationship, he definitely values helping especially Monica deal with their problems. Let's not forget that he actually hired a maid for Monica. Even though she loves to clean and all, he wanted to be helpful and actually hired a maid, which ended up being a really bad idea. So yeah, there are some good options of which or of how Chandler could be the caregiver archetype. Moving on, we have the hero archetype. The whole point of this archetype is that it's supposed to be a person that is designed to overcome challenges. They get their power or all their strength and resolve from themselves and from others. They usually have a personal obstacle that they have to overcome along with it. They often encourage other people to also follow their dreams. They're real go-getters, not really abstract thinkers, kind of more of a act now, think later kind of personality. Not to say that they're brutes. A lot of heroes are considered very creative and really big thinkers, but still a hero. These are the types of people that get their strength and desire to help others in need. And although I do think this is something that Chandler does try to do from time to time, he does care a lot about his friends. I don't think he's a really big obstacle overcoming kind of guy. Basically, he doesn't really try and go for things head on. He usually tries to find some kind of sneaky way around it, which goes back to supporting the whole gesture theory, but I don't think would be a very good hero, unfortunately. Sorry, Chandler. The next one is the revolutionary. So this is the person that desires change. They don't like the status quo and they don't like the way things are. They can be very personally driven or externally driven by their environment around them. They want to be feared and or respected by others. Revolutionaries, although are into big picture stuff, they're not one to mess over the tiny little details. This is why they're often willing to do a little bit of bad so you can do a lot of good. I honestly don't think that Chandler's a revolutionary. I mean, he seems to be pretty okay with the way things are, not too determined in trying to change things, or at least their environment. He does have some personal struggles within him, such as finding a job he really likes or who he wants to be in a relationship with throughout the series. But these are all internal struggles that he has to get over, not environmental situations that he's trying to change or control. The biggest environmental change throughout the series was when Chandler started dating Monica and they moved in together. Later on, even though it means losing a lot of his friends, he and Monica did eventually leave the apartment in the series finale. While he does contribute to the change of his environment, he doesn't really instigate it, nor does he have any primary control over it. He goes with the flow and thus doesn't really strike me as a revolutionary type. So, moving on. Alright, next we have the Outlaw. Now, this is the archetype that is most commonly associated with the antagonist in the story, though in Friends there doesn't really seem to be a primary one. This is a character that is free-minded and free-spirited, though the Outlaw doesn't always mean they are the bad guy, necessarily. They just think that they don't need to follow the rules, or that the rules just don't apply to them. And that is okay to be different and to have individual thoughts and opinions. They don't have the same desire to control the status quo that the revolutionary does, but they do like the idea of changing it. They want to be in control of their own fate, but not necessarily other people's. I don't really think Chandler is an outlaw either. As I previously stated, he seems at least mildly content with the way things are. He doesn't really make a lot of enemies, nor does he really enjoy being an outlier. He does have a problem with how he portrays himself to women, but he doesn't have a problem with the way women perceive him. His problems with the relationships he believes come from himself, not from other people. And again, he doesn't really face these problems head on. He tries to figure out some kind of creative way to get around the situation. So overall, the Outlaw doesn't seem like much of a contender. Next is the Magician. So this archetype is often associated with being wise, thoughtful, a good thinker. They are very reflective and transformative, and often go through a major change throughout the series. All of the other friends really seem to be pretty consistent in terms of their personalities, but I think Chandler really goes through from being an androphobic, pessimistic, and immature being to being a happily married, responsible goofball. He also resolves a lot of his internal problems towards the end of the series. He's no longer afraid of being alone, he's patched things up with both of his parents, and he's become much more confident with himself. The Magician is also considered to be the master of the elements, such as alchemists and chemists, people who had a good amount of understanding and knowledge. And Chandler definitely is a bit of a nerd when it comes to showing off his tech skills. He's also probably the most financially and economically successful amongst the 6 friends. Magicians are very good at assisting the characters, which is what Chandler does a lot. As previously stated, he helped Joey financially and gives a lot of good advice to Monica. He also uses his intelligence to solve a lot of his problems. The next is the Sage. Now this character is very similar to the Magician, but it's based more along the lines that they are completed and satisfied. The difference between the Magician and the Sage is that while the Magician is constantly seeking new knowledge to expand their intelligence, the Sage is more about applying the knowledge that they already have and applying it to situations and sharing their experience. They are shown as teachers and mentors that whisk the hero away on their adventure. While I wouldn't say he is so much in the beginning of the story, I think Chandler definitely gets to the Sage towards the end. He went from a guy who probably didn't even know what his own sexual orientation was. But he eventually grew up to not only knowing what he wanted, he also achieved a level of self-actualization and got everything he wanted. He became a good supporter for his friends, as well as a good provider for his wife and kids. Next is the Innocent. Now this is the archetype that is known for being a natural optimist. They can always find a silver lining to every situation, but unfortunately this means that they are likely to die. Their death often forces the hero into action and distinguishes the good from the bad. The Innocent can cause the revolutionary or outlaw to desire to make a change, or the hero to go on his epic quest to avenge his fallen comrade. The Innocent sees the good in people, is pure of heart, and very quick to forgive. They are morally just and virtuous, and don't really change. I wouldn't really say that Chandler is the Innocent. He does do a lot of bad things, such as kissing Joey's girlfriend while they're still together, and he's also perfectly capable to lie in order to get out of situations. Let's not forget that one of the ways he breaks up with Janice is by pretending to move to Yemen. Moving on, the Creator. This is also a person that has a high perspective of themselves, and are often somewhat self-absorbed. They provide structure and organization to their creations, and as well as to the world around them. They love it when people use what they're making because it makes them feel useful, and usually they have a certain level of power over others, or at least some kind of influence. They're often very smart, very wealthy, very powerful, very charismatic. They love the journey as well as the destination, and they have a big fear of not being enough, for either themselves or for someone else. So, in regards to Chandler, I do think he does show some creator personality traits. While he does provide a lot of financial and emotional support for the friends, he doesn't really create anything new or add to anything that's already there. The only thing that I think would account for this would be his jokes. Chandler does kind of see himself as the funny guy and it kind of thrives off comedy. There's actually an entire episode where he is actually arguing over whether or not his joke was actually his that was published. Last but not least is the Explorer. Now, the Explorer is characterized by being free and focused on self-discovery and improvement, like the Magician. Though the Magician wants intellectual knowledge, the Explorer is more prone to self-empowerment by gaining lots of experience. They're always willing to try new things and have a strong level of curiosity. They want to discover themselves and essentially are on a constant existential crisis, trying to figure out who they are and what their purpose is in life. They are very patient, very understanding, and very analytical. They enjoy breaking things down in order to figure out how they all fit together and then rebuilding them. I gotta say, I think Chandler is a bit of an explorer. He does have the scholarly nature to pick things apart and find the funny joke within them. Unfortunately, he doesn't really want to explore himself. I think he's actually very afraid of what he might find. And he's also very confused about what kind of job he wants, his level of intimacy, and he doesn't really have a burning desire to figure this stuff out. Well, after much thought and concentration, I've decided that based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, Chandler Bing is the Magician. This is because he goes through the biggest personality transformation out of all the friends in the entire series. His level of transformation is unparalleled to anyone else. Everyone else's personality stays pretty much the same, but Chandler definitely grows up the most. Now, I almost declared him the sage because of his role as a guiding hand in a wealthy occupation, but he actually gave up a high-paying job to do what he really enjoyed. And yes, he is considered the funny guy that would make you think Jester, but let's not forget that all the friends are funny in their own way. Thus, we have to look beyond the jokes to discover who he really is. He started out confused, acquired knowledge, and became the backbone of the friends. In other words, he starts out as the funny guy, loses his nubbin, and then becomes the funny, yet sensitive and responsible guy. His level of support and commitment and strong dedication to helping the friends made me decide that he is once again the Magician. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And be sure to comment down below what other shows you'd like to have me do. Thank you all for watching, and remember, stay concentrated.